Hi, I am Tyler, 28 years old, and I have spent the last 6 years working overtime and living frugally to save up $127,000. After landing a stable tech job post-college, I sacrificed vacations and luxuries to build my nest egg. I never expected my mother would find my bank statement during a casual visit last month. What shocked me more was when she started house shopping, not for herself, but for my younger sister Amanda, with my money. She has always favored my sister, but this crossed every boundary. Before I dive into this nightmare, drop a comment letting me know where you are watching from. Hit that like button and subscribe to hear how I handled this family betrayal. Growing up in Oakwood, a small Midwestern town with more cornfields than career opportunities, my childhood was shaped by financial uncertainty and emotional neglect. My parents divorced when I was 12, splitting our already struggling household into two even more precarious situations. My mother took custody of both me and my sister Amanda, who is 3 years younger, while my father moved 2 states away for a job opportunity he claimed could not wait. Mom worked 2 jobs waitressing during the day and cleaning office buildings at night just to keep us housed and fed. The divorce settlement provided minimal child support, which always seemed to arrive late if it came at all. Those early years were marked by boxed macaroni dinners, hand-me-down clothes, and the perpetual anxiety that comes from hearing your parent cry over bills late at night. Everything changed when Amanda was diagnosed with juvenile diabetes at age 10. Her condition required frequent doctor visits, special dietary needs, and expensive medications that our insurance only partially covered. Understandably, my mother's attention shifted heavily toward Amanda, whose health became the central focus of our family dynamic. What was less understandable was how completely I faded from my mother's radar. "Tyler, you need to be more independent," became her constant refrain. "Your sister needs me more than you do." By 13, I was making my own meals, doing my own laundry, and essentially parenting myself while my mother devoted every spare moment and resource to Amanda. I do not blame my sister. She was just a kid dealing with a serious medical condition, but the pattern established during those formative years would shape our family relationships forever. I remember clearly the day of my high school graduation. I had finished second in my class, earned a partial scholarship to State University, and was set to become the first person in our family to attend college. As I stood on stage receiving my honors, I scanned the audience for my mother's face. She was there, but she was not looking at me. She was fussing over Amanda, who was having what appeared to be a low blood sugar episode. Later, when I showed her my honors cords and scholarship letter, she glanced at them briefly and said, "That is nice, Tyler. Can you grab Amanda's testing kit from the car? She is not feeling well." That moment crystallized something I had felt for years, but had never fully acknowledged. In our family hierarchy, I would always come second. My achievements, struggles, and needs would never compete with Amanda's constant medical drama. My relationship with my father consisted mainly of birthday calls and the occasional Christmas visit. He had started a new family in Colorado. With 2 stepchildren he seemed more invested in than his biological son. Our conversations were superficial and brief, his knowledge of my life limited to whatever highlights I could compress into a 5-minute phone call twice a year. Despite these emotional challenges, or perhaps because of them, I developed a fierce independence and determination to create security for myself. I got my first job at 15 stocking shelves at the local grocery store after school and on weekends. Unlike most of my friends who spent their earnings on video games or car accessories, I saved obsessively. By senior year, I had enough to cover books and living expenses not included in my scholarship. State University was my escape from the emotional vacuum of home. I chose a computer science major, recognizing the growing demand for tech workers and the financial stability such a career could provide. College was not the carefree experience many of my peers enjoyed. While they attended parties and joined fraternities, I worked 20 hours a week at the campus IT help desk, maintained my scholarship with a 3.8 GPA, and continued my pattern of careful saving. During those 4 years, my mother called mainly to discuss Amanda's ongoing health issues or to subtly inquire if I could send money home. My sister had dropped out of high school, earned her GED, and cycled through a series of part-time jobs, none lasting more than a few months. Her health was often cited as the reason for these employment gaps, though I sometimes wondered if dependence had become a habit in our household. I visited home rarely, usually just for brief holiday appearances, finding that each return reopened emotional wounds that my absence had begun to heal. The pattern was always the same: initial warmth, followed by escalating demands for attention and resources focused on Amanda, with my mother as the ever-present orchestrator of this dynamic. By graduation, I had a clear objective: complete financial independence. No loans, no debts, and most importantly, no financial entanglements with my family. This was not out of selfishness, but self-preservation. I had watched my mother's life become consumed by financial insecurity, and I was determined that my story would follow a different path. I never discussed my financial plans or goals with my family. Experience had taught me that any resource I revealed would inevitably be reframed as a family asset, with my mother determining its most deserving recipient, a calculation in which I consistently ranked last. The year I graduated college, 2017, was not the best time to enter the job market. The tech industry was competitive, and despite my strong academic record and technical skills, I found myself in the frustrating cycle of promising interviews that ended with, "We went with a more experienced candidate" emails. For 3 months, I lived on ramen noodles in a friend's spare room, applying to dozens of positions daily and stretching my modest savings to the breaking point. Finally, a small tech consulting firm in Chicago took a chance on me. The starting salary of $45,000 was below market rate, but I was in no position to negotiate. I moved to the city with 2 suitcases and a laptop, sharing a 3-bedroom apartment in a questionable neighborhood with 4 other recent graduates, all trying to establish themselves in various fields. My room was barely large enough for a twin bed and a desk with a closet so narrow I had to hang my clothes at an angle. The apartment had 1 bathroom for 5 people, resulting in elaborate morning schedules and occasional heated disputes over shower time. The kitchen was perpetually dirty, despite my best efforts, and the living room had become a storage space for belongings that could not fit elsewhere. Rather than seeing these conditions as deprivations, I viewed them as investments in my future. Every dollar saved on rent was a dollar toward my growing financial cushion. I established a rigid budget, allocating specific amounts for rent, utilities, groceries, transportation, and miscellaneous expenses. Whatever remained, usually about 40% of my take-home pay, went directly into savings. My roommates thought I was extreme, even obsessive. They ordered takeout several times a week. I meal prepped every Sunday, bringing identical containers of chicken, rice, and vegetables to work each day. They upgraded their phones yearly. I kept my college phone until it literally stopped functioning. They took Ubers. I navigated Chicago's public transportation system in all weather conditions. They went out for drinks after work. I volunteered for extra projects that might position me for advancement. After 2 years of this disciplined approach, I had saved nearly $30,000 and positioned myself for a promotion. My work ethic and technical abilities had not gone unnoticed, and I was moved to a project lead position with a salary increase to $60,000. While my lifestyle remained essentially unchanged, my savings rate accelerated dramatically. It was around this time that a recruiter reached out about an opportunity at DataStream Technologies, a larger firm with more resources and advancement potential. After a series of interviews, I was offered a solutions architect position at $85,000, nearly double my initial salary. I accepted, immediately recognizing this as a pivotal moment in my financial journey. With my substantial salary increase, I consulted a financial advisor for the first time. Jordan Matthews at Midwest Financial Strategies helped me establish more sophisticated savings goals and investment strategies. We created a 5-year plan focused on building a substantial down payment for a house, while also establishing retirement savings and an emergency fund. Most people your age are focused on experiences rather than financial security, Jordan observed during our first meeting. What is driving this level of financial discipline? I explained my family background briefly, emphasizing my desire for stability rather than delving into the emotional components. Jordan nodded understandingly and helped me set up automatic transfers to various accounts, effectively removing the temptation to spend before saving. My lifestyle continued to be defined by strategic sacrifices. While I moved to a slightly better apartment with only 2 roommates instead of 4, I still drove the same used Honda Civic I had purchased in college, now approaching 150,000 miles. I took no vacations, had no streaming subscriptions, and bought clothes only when absolutely necessary. My furniture consisted mainly of second-hand pieces found on online marketplaces or rescued from curbs on bulk pickup days. Friends and coworkers occasionally expressed concern about what they perceived as excessive frugality. "You need to live a little," was a common refrain, usually followed by invitations to expensive restaurants or weekend trips I would invariably decline. What they did not understand was that my approach to money was not deprivation but delayed gratification. Every dollar I saved represented future freedom and security. By my 28th birthday, after 6 years of this disciplined approach, my savings had reached the milestone of $127,000. This represented countless small decisions, consistent habits, and an unwavering focus on long-term goals over immediate pleasures. The satisfaction I felt looking at that number on my account statement far outweighed any temporary enjoyment I had sacrificed to achieve it. With this sum, I began researching neighborhoods in Chicago where I might purchase a home. I wanted something modest, but in a safe area, with good appreciation potential, perhaps a 2-bedroom condo, or a small single-family home, needing minor renovations. I spent evenings browsing real estate listings, calculating mortgage payments, and imagining the stability of having a place truly my own. I envisioned a small home office where I could work on side projects, a guest room for the few friends who had stood by me, despite my frugal lifestyle, and perhaps a small yard where I could learn to garden. Nothing extravagant, just a solid foundation upon which to build the next phase of my life. The $127,000 represented more than money to me. It was tangible proof that I could create security for myself despite my challenging start. It was evidence that discipline and planning could overcome the chaos and uncertainty that had defined my childhood. Most importantly, it was mine earned through my efforts and protected by my vigilance. I had not shared the details of my financial position with anyone except my financial advisor. Not my roommates, not my few close friends, and certainly not my family. This privacy was not about secrecy, but boundaries. Boundaries I had learned were essential when dealing with my mother and sister. Little did I know how dramatically those boundaries were about to be tested. Last month, on a Tuesday evening, as I was finishing a video call with clients, my phone lit up with a text from my mother, "Surprise, I will be in Chicago for a medical conference this weekend. Planning to stay with you Friday through Sunday. Cannot wait to see your place." This was typical of my mother announcing rather than asking, assuming accommodation rather than requesting it. We had spoken only twice in the previous 6 months, brief, surface-level conversations that revealed little about either of our lives. Her sudden interest in visiting raised immediate concerns, but years of conditioning made it difficult to refuse. I spent Thursday evening frantically cleaning the apartment I shared with 2 roommates, both of whom agreed to make themselves scarce during my mother's visit. I cleared space in my room for her suitcase, purchased groceries for proper meals rather than my usual utilitarian fare, and even bought a new set of towels for the bathroom, a small expense that felt significant after years of rigorous budgeting. When she arrived Friday afternoon, I was struck by how she had aged. Her hair, once vibrant auburn like mine, had faded to a dull brown with prominent gray streaks. New lines had formed around her eyes and mouth, and she moved with a slight stiffness that had not been present during our last meeting. Despite our complicated relationship, I felt a momentary pang of concern and even guilt about my limited presence in her life. "Tyler, look at you all grown up in the big city," she exclaimed, embracing me with unexpected warmth. "Your apartment is cozy." The slight pause before cozy contained volumes of unspoken criticism. The first few hours passed pleasantly enough, as we engaged in careful conversation about neutral topics, the weather in Chicago, versus back home the conference she was attending. My general work responsibilities described in deliberately vague terms. She shared updates about extended family members. I barely remembered neighborhood changes in my hometown and the new pastor at her church. Eventually, the conversation turned to Amanda, as I knew it inevitably would. "Your sister is really struggling right now," My mother sighed, settling into what I recognized as her martyrdom posture, shoulders slightly slumped, head tilted downward, voice lowered for dramatic effect. Her condition has been causing complications with her kidneys, and she had to reduce her hours at the dental office. And with little Joey starting kindergarten next year, she is worried about after-school care costs. I had almost forgotten that Amanda had a son, my 5-year-old nephew, whom I had met only twice. Joey's father had never been in the picture, another detail that frequently featured in my mother's narratives about Amanda's challenging circumstances. That sounds difficult, I responded neutrally, unwilling to be drawn into the familiar pattern of Amanda's crises becoming my responsibility. My mother continued cataloging Amanda's financial and health challenges in extensive detail, while I prepared dinner, nothing fancy, just pasta, with a homemade sauce that represented a step up from my usual meal prep. Throughout her monologue, she interspersed subtle comments about my apparent financial comfort. You are lucky you do not have health issues limiting your work. It must be nice to afford a place in Chicago. That shirt looks expensive, you must be doing well. Each comment was designed to probe my financial situation, while simultaneously inducing guilt about it. It was a familiar dance, one I had learned to sidestep by neither confirming nor denying any assumptions about my circumstances. After dinner, I realized we were low on breakfast essentials for the morning. I need to grab a few things from the store, I told her. Make yourself comfortable, there is Netflix on the television if you want to watch something. I will be back in 30 minutes. Take your time, she replied, with a dismissive wave. I might organize a bit around here. This place could use a woman's touch. I should have recognized the warning in those words, but years of conditioning had taught me to avoid conflict with my mother at all costs. I grabbed my keys and headed out, relieved to have a brief respite from the tension of maintaining conversational vigilance. The grocery store was 3 blocks away, and I deliberately took my time selecting items, even wandering through aisles I did not need anything, from stretching my errand to nearly 45 minutes. When I returned, something felt immediately different in the apartment. Items on my desk had been rearranged, and several drawers were slightly ajar. My mother was sitting on the couch scrolling through her phone with exaggerated casualness. I tidied up a bit, she announced without looking up. Your filing system was a mess. I sorted things for you. A cold wave of realization washed over me as I set down the groceries. My home office area, normally off-limits to roommates, would have contained my financial documents, including recent bank statements that I had printed for an upcoming meeting with my financial advisor. You did not need to do that, I said carefully, fighting to keep my tone neutral. I have a system that works for me. Well, it is done now, she replied with finality, still not meeting my eyes. By the way, I was thinking we could visit that new museum tomorrow. My treat, of course. I know you young people are always saving for something or other. The rest of the evening was excruciating. My mother's demeanor had subtly shifted. She watched me with calculating eyes, making pointed remarks about people who hoard resources and family obligations. During a discussion about a news story involving inheritance disputes, she remarked, "Blood is thicker than water, but some people seem to think money is thicker than blood." I retreated to monosyllabic responses, trying to process what information she might have seen and what her next move might be. After an uncomfortable night's sleep on the couch I had given her my bedroom, I was not entirely surprised when she announced the next morning that she needed to cut her visit short. Something came up with Amanda, she explained vaguely. Mother duty calls. We will do the museum another time. As I helped her with her suitcase, she paused at the door. You know, Tyler, I always worried about you growing up. You were so closed off, so separate from the family. I see that has not changed. Her tone carried both accusation and disappointment. After she left, I immediately checked my desk. The bank statement showing my $127,000 savings balance had been moved from its folder to the top of the pile, positioned in a way that made it impossible to miss. It had not been an accidental discovery. She had been searching for exactly this kind of information. A deep unease settled in my stomach as I realized what had likely been set in motion. Based on past experience, I knew this information would not remain private for long, and that my mother was already formulating plans for money she now knew existed, but that did not belong to her. The Wednesday, following my mother's abbreviated visit, My phone rang with Amanda's name flashing on the screen. This was unusual. My sister and I typically communicated through occasional text messages on birthdays and holidays, our conversations mediated by our mother, rather than occurring directly. Tyler, oh my God, I am so excited to talk to you. Amanda's voice bubbled through the speaker with an enthusiasm that immediately put me on alert. Mom said you were doing really well in Chicago, but she did not tell me how well until yesterday. My stomach tightened as I prepared for what was coming. What did she tell you exactly? I asked, trying to keep my tone casual. About your savings. The house fund, Amanda exclaimed. $127,000, that is amazing. Tyler, Mom says that is more than enough for a down payment on a really nice place, especially in our area where prices are lower than Chicago. The mention of the exact amount confirmed my worst fears. Not only had my mother invaded my privacy by searching through my financial documents, but she had also shared this information with Amanda, apparently framing my personal savings as a house fund that might somehow benefit her. Amanda, I said carefully, that money is not a house fund for anyone but me. I have been saving for years to buy my own place here in Chicago. There was a pause, then a confused laugh. But Mom said, she said you were planning to help family. She said you always wanted to make sure Joey and I had a stable home, especially with my medical expenses and everything. When did I ever say that? I asked, feeling a surge of anger that I struggled to contain. Well, not directly to me, Amanda admitted, but Mom said you two discussed it during her visit. She is actually meeting with a realtor tomorrow to look at a few places that would work for Joey and me. There is this perfect 3-bedroom ranch, just 10 minutes from her house, listed at $345,000. With your down payment, my monthly mortgage would be totally manageable, even with my reduced hours at work. The casual way she referred to my down payment sent a surge of disbelief through me. The audacity of their assumption was staggering. Not only had they decided my money was available to them, but they were actively making plans to spend it without any direct conversation with me. Amanda, stop, I interrupted firmly. Mom and I never discussed anything like this. That money represents 6 years of extreme saving and sacrifice. It is for my future, not yours. Wow, she responded, her tone instantly shifting from excitement to wounded indignation. That is really selfish, Tyler. You know about my health issues and Joey's needs. Mom said you might try to back out, but I did not believe her. She said you have always resented me because of my diabetes and the attention I needed growing up. This manipulation tactic, painting my reasonable boundaries as evidence of long-standing jealousy, was so transparent it would have been laughable if it were not so infuriating. It carried my mother's signature emotional fingerprints all over it. This has nothing to do with your health or childhood, I replied, struggling to keep my voice steady. This is about my personal savings being discussed and allocated without my knowledge or consent. I need to talk to Mom directly about this. Fine, Amanda sniffed. But just so you know, Mom already told everyone how you are helping me get a house. Aunt Linda called me this morning to congratulate us. Grandma is so proud of you for taking care of family. After ending the call with Amanda, I immediately called my mother. She answered on the first ring, as if she had been waiting for this exact call. Tyler, I was just about to call you, she began brightly, as if nothing were amiss. What gave you the right to go through my financial documents? I demanded, bypassing pleasantries entirely. I was not snooping, she replied defensively. I was organizing your cluttered desk and happened to see the statement. As your mother, I think I have a right to know if my son is doing well financially. And what gave you the right to tell Amanda about my savings, or to tell her that money was for her house? Now, Tyler, her voice took on the patronizing tone I remembered from childhood. Family helps family. You have more than you need, and your sister is struggling. As the more fortunate sibling, you have a responsibility to help her. I raised you to value family above material possessions. You raised me to fend for myself, I corrected her. From the time Amanda was diagnosed, I was on my own, emotionally and often physically, while you focused entirely on her. I worked through high school and college, saved every penny, lived with multiple roommates in tiny apartments, and sacrificed any luxury for years to build that savings. And now you and Amanda think you can just take it. No one is taking anything, my mother replied, her voice hardening. We are asking you to be part of this family for once, instead of always keeping yourself separate. Amanda needs stability for Joey, and you have the means to provide it. What would you even do with all that money anyway? Buy some fancy condo just for yourself. That is not how I raised you. You did not raise me to give away everything I work for either, I responded. The answer is no. That money is not available for Amanda's house or any other family expenses. It is my money earned through my work and my sacrifices. After everything I sacrificed for you, she hissed, her pretense of reasonableness evaporating. All the nights I worked 2 jobs to keep a roof over your head and food in your stomach. This is how you repay me, by refusing to help your sick sister and innocent nephew. What kind of person have you become, Tyler? The kind who respects boundaries, I answered. Do not call realtors. Do not make plans for my money. And do not tell more family members about this situation. This discussion is over. I ended the call and sat in stunned silence, trying to process the magnitude of what had just happened. Within days of discovering my savings, my mother had constructed an entire narrative in which I had somehow promised this money to Amanda, shared this fiction with my sister and extended family members, and begun the process of actually spending my money on a house I had never agreed to help purchase. The violation felt total, not just of my privacy and finances, but of the basic respect one person owes another. In their worldview, my autonomy was secondary to their desires, my boundaries meaningless in the face of family obligation. Over the next 3 days, the pressure campaign intensified. Amanda sent pictures of houses she was viewing, including detailed descriptions of why each would be perfect for Joey. My mother left voicemails about realtor appointments and mortgage pre-approval processes, speaking as if my participation were a foregone conclusion. Various extended family members sent texts expressing their pride in my generosity, further cementing the false narrative that I had willingly offered this financial support. Most manipulative of all was a video message from Joey, clearly coached by either Amanda or my mother, thanking Uncle Tyler for helping them get a new house with a backyard where he could play. The little boy's innocent excitement, weaponized against me, represented a new low in emotional manipulation. By Sunday evening, I received a text from my mother: family dinner at my house next Saturday, 6 p.m. Amanda and Joey will be there. Realtor is bringing final paperwork. Do not disappoint us. The phrasing, not a request, but a command with an implicit threat of familial disappointment, crystallized everything wrong with our dynamic. This planned ambush disguised as a family dinner would be the showdown they had orchestrated. Little did they know I was finally ready to stand my ground. I arrived at my mother's house precisely at 6 o'clock that Saturday, having spent the preceding week in a state of simmering anger, interspersed with moments of doubt and guilt. The emotional programming of childhood dies hard, and there were moments when I questioned whether I was indeed being selfish, whether family obligation should override my personal goals. These doubts evaporated the moment I stepped into my mother's living room and saw not just my mother and Amanda, but a woman in a business suit arranging documents on the dining table. Joey was nowhere to be seen, likely sent to a friend's house to ensure adult conversations could proceed uninterrupted. Tyler, my mother exclaimed with manufactured warmth. You remember Diane Hoffman? She was 2 years ahead of you in school. She is a realtor now, and she has found the perfect home for Amanda and Joey. Diane smiled professionally and extended her hand. Great to reconnect, Tyler. Your mother has told me how excited you are to help your sister become a homeowner. We have got some excellent options to review. The presumption was breathtaking. I shook her hand briefly, but did not return the smile. Before we get to that, my mother continued, gesturing toward the dining table where Amanda was already seated. I made your favorite pot roast with those red potatoes you always loved as a boy. This transparent attempt to soften me up with nostalgia might have been laughable if it were not so manipulative. I could not recall the last time my mother had made any special meal for me, nor could I remember ever expressing particular fondness for pot roast. Let's skip the pretense, I said, remaining standing while everyone else had taken seats. I made my position clear on the phone. My savings are not available for Amanda's house purchase. Amanda's face immediately crumpled into a practiced expression of devastation. But we already picked out the perfect place. It has the fenced yard for Joey and is in the good school district. The sellers accepted our offer contingent on financing. What offer? I demanded. Who authorized you to make an offer on a house with my money? Now, Tyler, my mother interjected, with forced calmness, no one is making demands here. We are simply presenting an opportunity for you to help family. The house Amanda has selected is $450,000, a very reasonable price for a 3-bedroom in that neighborhood. $450,000. They had not only assumed access to my entire savings, but had selected a house that would require me to liquidate investment accounts as well. The audacity was stunning. Diane has prepared all the paperwork. My mother continued, gesturing to the documents on the table. Your contribution would be the down payment, $120,000, and Amanda would handle the monthly mortgage payments. It is a perfect arrangement. And who pays if Amanda cannot make those payments? I asked already, knowing the answer. Who covers the property taxes, insurance maintenance, and repairs? Family helps family, my mother replied with the practiced martyrdom I knew so well. If Amanda needs assistance occasionally, I am sure you would not let your nephew lose his home. There it was not just a one-time demand for my savings, but the establishment of an open-ended financial commitment that would likely drain my resources for years to come. The house would be in Amanda's name, but the financial responsibility would ultimately fall to me whenever health issues, employment gaps, or other crises inevitably arose. Your phone has been ringing all afternoon, my mother added, changing tactics. Aunt Linda, Uncle Paul, even Grandma has called to say how proud they are of you. The whole family is so touched by your generosity. Amanda nodded eagerly. I already told Joey he could paint his room blue, that is his favorite color. And I was thinking of converting the 3rd bedroom into a guest room so you could stay whenever you visit. It would be your room too, in a way. As they continued detailing plans for my money, my phone buzzed with a text from my cousin Patrick. Hey man, just heard about you helping Amanda buy a house. That is awesome of you. Always knew you were the good one in the family. The systematic way they had spread this narrative throughout the extended family became clear. It was a strategy to create so much social pressure that backing out would brand me as the villain, the selfish relative who had reneged on a promised gift. Diane, the realtor, cleared her throat. If we could just review the paperwork. I have a 730 showing across town. Something inside me snapped. Not in a loss of control, but in a moment of perfect clarity. Years of suppressed resentment, boundary violations, and emotional manipulation crystallized into a single moment of absolute certainty. There will be no paperwork review, I stated flatly. There will be no down payment. There will be no house purchase with my money. My mother's expression hardened. Tyler, do not be difficult. We have arranged everything. You arranged nothing with me. I interrupted, my voice steady but forceful. You invaded my privacy, discovered my savings, and immediately began planning how to spend it without my consent. You lied to Amanda about discussions we never had. You lied to extended family about agreements I never made. You have manipulated and guilted and pressured, but not once have you simply respected me or my boundaries. Amanda began to cry. Not the subtle tears of genuine hurt, but the theatrical sobs I recognized from childhood incidents when she did not get her way. I told Mom, you have always hated me because of my diabetes. You resent the attention I needed growing up. This has nothing to do with your diabetes, I replied evenly. This is about respect. Neither of you have shown me any. You see me not as a person with my own life and goals, but as a resource to be tapped whenever you decide my sister needs something. My mother stood up, her face flushing with anger. After all I have done for you, the sacrifices I made, working 2 jobs to keep you fed and housed, this is how you repay me, by refusing to help your own sister. What sacrifices did you make for me? Specifically, I asked, meeting her gaze directly. From the time Amanda was diagnosed, I was an afterthought in this family. I raised myself, worked since I was 15, put myself through college, and built my career without support from either of you. The money I have saved came from my work, my discipline, and my choices to delay gratification year after year, while living with roommates in tiny apartments and driving an old car that breaks down regularly. The silence that followed was deafening. My mother and sister exchanged glances, momentarily thrown off script by my direct confrontation of the family mythology. The emotional manipulation ends today, I continued. I will not be funding Amanda's house. I will not be made to feel guilty for setting this boundary. And I will be correcting the false narrative you have spread throughout the family. Diane, the realtor, clearly uncomfortable with the family drama unfolding, began gathering her papers. Perhaps we should reschedule when everyone is more aligned on the plan. There is no plan to align on, I stated firmly. Amanda will need to find housing within her own budget, not mine. My mother's expression shifted from anger to the cold disappointment that had been her most effective weapon throughout my childhood. I never thought my own son would turn his back on family this way. What would your father say if he could see you now? It was her nuclear option, invoking my absent father as a moral authority, but it no longer held power over me. Dad would probably recognize this situation for exactly what it is, I replied, a boundary test that I am finally passing after years of failing. I turned to leave, my heart pounding, but my resolve unshaken. If you walk out that door, do not expect to be welcomed back until you make this right. My mother called after me, her final attempt at leverage. I paused at the doorway. I will be happy to have a relationship with both of you when you can respect my boundaries and treat me as an adult rather than a resource. Until then, I need some distance. The drive home was a blur of emotional release, anger, grief, relief, and something unexpected pride. For perhaps the first time in my adult life, I had stood firm against the tidal wave of family expectation and manipulation. The cost of this stance remained to be seen, but the sense of reclaimed autonomy was immediate and powerful. As I entered my apartment, my phone buzzed with the first volley, in what would likely be an extended campaign to break my resolve. A photo of Joey looking sad, sent by Amanda with the caption, "Thanks for crushing a little boy's dreams." I turned off my phone, made a cup of tea, and sat in the quiet of my apartment, processing the seismic shift that had just occurred in my family dynamics. The guilt was there, carefully installed through years of conditioning, but it was overshadowed by the certainty that I had finally done what was necessary for my own well-being. The week following my confrontation at my mother's house was marked by silence, a jarring contrast to the barrage of calls, texts, and emotional appeals that had preceded it. I had expected intensified pressure, but instead encountered a void. No messages from my mother, no tearful calls from Amanda, no updates from extended family members who had been so quick to praise my fictitious generosity. This silence was strategic. I realized another form of manipulation designed to make me question my decision through isolation rather than direct confrontation. But it also provided a much-needed respite space to process the events of recent weeks and fortify my resolve. I used this time productively consulting professionals who could help me navigate the situation. My first call was to Jordan Matthews, my financial advisor, who listened with increasing concern as I explained what had transpired. "Unfortunately, this type of situation is not uncommon," Jordan said after I finished my account. "Family financial entanglements can be some of the most damaging to long-term wealth building. Let's take some steps to protect your assets." Under Jordan's guidance, I transferred my savings to a different bank entirely, one my mother had no knowledge of. We reviewed security measures on all my accounts, changing passwords and security questions and placing additional verification requirements on any significant withdrawals. While I did not truly believe my mother would attempt to access my accounts fraudulently, the boundary violations she had already committed warranted these precautions. My second call was to Dr. Sarah Chen, a therapist I had seen briefly during a stressful period at work 2 years prior. She had availability for a virtual session the following day, and I gratefully accepted. "What you are describing is a classic family system, with poor boundaries," Dr. Chen observed after I recounted recent events. "Your mother and sister have established a dynamic where your autonomy is secondary to their needs and wants. Your refusal to participate in this dynamic is healthy, but will inevitably be met with escalating attempts to pull you back into the established pattern." Dr. Chen helped me develop strategies for maintaining boundaries, while processing the complex emotions of guilt, anger, and grief that accompanied this family rupture. We scheduled weekly sessions to continue this work, acknowledging that unraveling lifelong patterns would require ongoing support. 10 days after the confrontation, my father called a rare occurrence that immediately signaled my mother had escalated her campaign. My father and I typically spoke only on birthdays and major holidays, our relationship cordial but distant. His sudden interest confirmed my suspicion that my mother had recruited him as another pressure point. "Your mother called me," he began without preamble. "She says you are refusing to help your sister buy a house despite having plenty of money saved up. She wanted me to talk some sense into you." I braced for another round of guilt and manipulation, but my father's next words surprised me. "I told her I would call you, but not to convince you of anything. I wanted to hear your side directly." Cautiously, I explained the situation, my years of careful saving, my mother's discovery of my bank statement, the presumptuous plans made without my consent or input, and finally, the ambush dinner with the realtor. My father listened, without interruption, then sighed heavily. "This does not surprise me, Tyler. Your mother did the same thing throughout our marriage, making financial decisions unilaterally, prioritizing her wants or Amanda's needs over household stability, creating situations where refusing her demands made me the villain. It was a major factor in our divorce, though I never discussed those details with you kids." This revelation shifted something fundamental in my understanding of my childhood. The narrative I had always accepted that my father had abandoned us for a better opportunity suddenly appeared incomplete at best, deliberately misleading at worst. "I should have maintained a closer relationship with you after the divorce," my father continued, regret evident in his voice. "I told myself you were better off with a clean break than watching your parents fight over boundaries and money. That was a mistake on my part." "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked, still processing this new information. "Because you need to know you are not wrong to protect yourself and your financial future," he replied firmly. "The pattern you are seeing has played out before, and you have every right to break it. Your savings represent your hard work and discipline. No one, not your mother, not your sister, not even me, has any claim to it without your freely given consent." This unexpected alliance with my father provided validation I had not realized I needed. For so long, I had questioned whether my perception of family dynamics was accurate, or whether I was indeed the selfish, emotionally distant person my mother often described. My father's perspective confirmed what I had begun to suspect, that the dysfunction ran deeper and predated many of my conscious memories. The following day, I received a letter from my mother, not an email or text, but an actual paper letter sent through the mail. This formality itself was telling. My mother had always preferred written communication for her most significant emotional manipulations, creating a record that could be referenced and shared to support her narrative. The letter began with a veneer of apology. "I may have overstepped in discussing your finances with Amanda, but quickly pivoted to renewed pressure. However, as a mother, I cannot understand how you can have so much while your sister and nephew have so little. Family takes care of family. Your selfishness breaks my heart." The familiar patterns of guilt, induction, martyrdom, and binary framing, either I gave Amanda my savings or I was selfish, were transparent now that I had developed language to identify them. Rather than responding immediately from a place of triggered emotion, I discussed the letter with Dr. Chen in our next session. "Notice how your mother acknowledges overstepping, but never actually apologizes for it," Dr. Chen pointed out. "And notice how quickly she returns to labeling your boundary as selfishness rather than recognizing it as a legitimate expression of autonomy." With Dr. Chen's guidance, I drafted a brief, clear response. "I understand you are disappointed by my decision. However, my financial boundaries are not negotiable. I am open to rebuilding our relationship when my autonomy is respected." This measured response triggered an avalanche of texts from Amanda, ranging from angry accusations, "You have always been jealous of me," to pitiful pleas. "Joey keeps asking when we are moving to our new house." Each message was designed to breach my newly established boundaries through different emotional triggers. I maintained minimal contact, responding only to acknowledge receipt of messages without engaging with their emotional content. This approach, recommended by Dr. Chen, avoided both complete estrangement and toxic engagement. 3 weeks after our confrontation, I received an unexpected call from my Aunt Judith, my mother's older sister, with whom I had always had a cordial but distant relationship. "Tyler, I wanted to check on you," she began cautiously. "Your mother has been telling the family about this situation with Amanda's house, and something about it did not sit right with me." Aunt Judith revealed that my mother had presented an increasingly distorted version of events to the extended family, claiming now that I had explicitly promised the money to Amanda, then cruelly withdrawn the offer, after she had already committed to purchasing a specific house. "It did not sound like you," Aunt Judith said simply. "And it reminded me too much of situations your mother created when you were children." She went on to share that this pattern of financial manipulation was not new. My mother had apparently done similar things throughout their childhood, creating scenarios where she would commit other family members' resources without consultation, then orchestrate social pressure when they resisted. "Your grandfather finally cut her off financially after she borrowed money from his business account for the third time," Aunt Judith revealed. "Your mother painted him as cruel and uncaring, but he was simply protecting his livelihood from her impulsive decisions." This historical context helped me understand that the current situation was not unique to me, but part of a long-standing pattern. It also explained why my mother had reacted so strongly to my boundary. It represented a challenge, not just to this specific demand, but to a lifetime of successful financial manipulation. By the 6-week mark, the intensity of pressure began to subside. Amanda texted to inform me she had found a small 2-bedroom apartment within her budget, her tone suggesting I should feel guilty that she and Joey would be forced to live in such a small space. My mother's communications became less frequent, but more pointed, often referencing family events I would be excluded from if I maintained my selfish stance. Dr. Chen helped me recognize these communications for what they were. Extinction bursts, the intensification of manipulative behaviors that often occur before they finally cease to be effective. By maintaining consistent boundaries, despite escalating pressure, I was demonstrating that these tactics no longer worked, forcing a recalibration of our family dynamic. 2 months after the confrontation, my mother called with a noticeably different tone. "I may have been hasty in how I approached the situation," she said, the closest thing to an apology I expected to receive. "Amanda has settled into her apartment, and Joey seems to like being closer to his school friends." This was not a genuine recognition of boundary violations or manipulation, but it was an implicit acknowledgement that the campaign had failed and a new approach was necessary. I accepted this limited olive branch for what it was. Not true reconciliation, but perhaps the beginning of a differently structured relationship. Amanda, too, eventually reached out with less emotional volatility. "Mom says, I should thank you for the birthday check for Joey." She texted referencing the gift card I had sent my nephew, despite the ongoing tension with his mother. He really liked the dinosaur card. These small tentative steps toward a new normal were encouraging, though I maintained vigilant boundaries, aware that old patterns might re-emerge at any moment. With Dr. Chen's guidance, I developed clear, internal guidelines for what types of support I was willing to offer: my family birthday gifts for Joey, occasional shared meals, when emotional manipulation was absent, and what remained off-limits, namely any significant financial entanglement. The journey was far from complete, but for the first time in my adult life, I felt I was relating to my family from a position of conscious choice rather than conditioned compliance. The cost had been high in terms of emotional turmoil, but the freedom gained was immeasurable. 6 months have passed since that pivotal confrontation in my mother's dining room, and while the dust has settled, the landscape of my family relationships has been permanently altered. Like tectonic plates shifting during an earthquake, the boundaries I established created a new formation, one initially jarring, but ultimately more stable than what came before. True to my original plan, I proceeded with my home search, now with a clearer sense of purpose, and without the cloud of familial demands hanging over the process. After viewing 17 properties and making 3 offers, I finally closed on a modest 2-bedroom townhouse in a diverse neighborhood 20 minutes from my office. At $260,000, it required just over half of my savings as down payment, leaving a comfortable cushion for emergencies and future investments. The day I signed the closing papers remains one of the proudest moments of my life. Sitting at that table reviewing documents that represented not just a property transaction, but the culmination of years of discipline and boundary setting, I felt a sense of accomplishment that transcended the mere acquisition of real estate. This was the tangible manifestation of my values, priorities, and hard-won autonomy. My relationship with my mother has evolved into something I would describe as cordial but distant. We speak approximately once a month. Our conversations carefully choreographed around neutral topics: the weather, community, news, her garden, my general work satisfaction described in deliberately vague terms. She has visited my new home once, her compliments tinged with subtle critiques. It is nice, though. I would have chosen a neighborhood closer to family, but largely respectful of the achievement it represents. The most significant improvement has come in my relationship with Amanda, which has slowly transformed into something more adult and balanced than ever before. Our initial reconciliation came through Joey. My genuine affection for my nephew provided neutral ground where Amanda and I could begin rebuilding without immediately confronting our more complex history. 3 months after our falling out, Amanda called with news that surprised me. I enrolled in a medical billing certification program, she told me, a note of tentative pride in her voice. The community college has childcare assistance, and it is mostly online, so I can work around my health issues. If everything goes well, I could double my income within a year. This initiative, taken without prompting or pressure, represented a shift in Amanda's approach to her challenges, one focused on self-efficacy rather than dependence. I expressed genuine enthusiasm and interest, careful to support, without overstepping or taking ownership of her progress. Over coffee a few weeks later, Amanda made an admission that shifted our relationship fundamentally. "I think I got used to being the one who needed help," she said, stirring her latte pensively. "Mom always treated me like I could not manage on my own because of my health, and eventually, I started believing it too. Seeing you refuse to rescue me, as harsh as it felt at the time, made me realize I needed to figure things out for myself." This conversation marked the beginning of a more authentic connection between us, one based on mutual respect rather than the rescuer-victim dynamic that had characterized our previous interactions. We now meet monthly for lunch, sharing updates on our lives and building the adult-sibling relationship neither of us had models for growing up. My father and I have also established more regular communication, speaking every other week, and even planning a fishing trip in the spring, our first intentional one-on-one time since my childhood. He has shared more context about my parents' marriage and divorce, filling in gaps in my understanding without demonizing my mother despite their difficult history. "Patterns repeat until someone decides to break them," he told me during one of our conversations. "You did what I should have done much earlier, set clear boundaries, and stuck to them despite the emotional cost. I am proud of you for that." Perhaps the most profound healing has come through my ongoing work with Dr. Chen, who has helped me understand that the financial manipulation attempt was merely a symptom of deeper family dynamics that had shaped my identity and relationships for decades. Through weekly sessions, I have explored the hypervigilance and emotional detachment I developed as protection mechanisms in childhood learning to recognize when these once necessary adaptations now hinder authentic connection in my adult relationships. The irony Dr. Chen observed in a recent session is that by establishing firm boundaries with your family, you have actually created the possibility for more genuine relationships with them. Clear boundaries make authentic intimacy possible, because they establish trust and respect. This insight has extended beyond my family relationships into my friendships and dating life. I have become more intentional about who I allow into my inner circle, more comfortable articulating my needs and limits, and paradoxically more capable of genuine vulnerability with those who demonstrate respect for my boundaries. My home has become a physical manifestation of this new approach to relationships. I have furnished it thoughtfully, rather than frugally, creating a space that reflects my values and preferences. The second bedroom serves as both home office and occasional guest room for the small but growing circle of friends who enrich my life. The modest backyard now contains raised garden beds where I grow herbs and vegetables, a tangible connection to nurturing life and growth. Financial independence remains important to me, but I now recognize it as a means to security and choice rather than an end in itself. I have adjusted my saving strategy to allow for experiences that add meaning and joy, occasional travel, continuing education, concerts, and quality time with friends, while maintaining the discipline that serves my long-term goals. The most valuable lesson from this experience has been learning to define family through actions, rather than merely blood relations. Family consists of those who respect your boundaries, celebrate your successes without resentment, support your growth without expectation of control, and love you as you are rather than for what you can provide. By this definition, my circle of family now includes friends, mentors, and even some biological relatives who have demonstrated these qualities consistently. I still maintain the careful financial habits that allowed me to accumulate my savings, but they now exist within a more balanced approach to resources and relationships. Money remains important as a tool for security and opportunity, but I no longer view financial discipline as the primary measure of my worth or accomplishment. If my story resonates with you, perhaps you have faced similar challenges with family boundaries and financial expectations. Remember that establishing healthy limits is not selfish, but necessary for authentic relationships. Your resources, whether financial, emotional, or temporal, are yours to allocate according to your values and priorities. The discomfort of setting boundaries is temporary, but the freedom gained is lasting. Have you ever had to establish difficult boundaries with family members over financial matters? How did you navigate those challenging conversations? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story helped you recognize similar patterns in your own life, please hit the like button and subscribe for more authentic conversations about family dynamics, financial independence, and personal growth. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, true family supports your well-being rather than undermining it for their benefit.